Hello, everyone, and delighted to be with you today. And really, very happy you decided to join us as we discuss creating modern work experiences for HR teams and beyond. Now, I've spent, over 20 years in HR working for high-tech companies, and I continue to work in that space, as Sean said, as a consultant. So no surprises, I'm really passionate about the HR profession and the valuable contribution it makes and brings to organizations and to the wider society. I think HR is really at an important point, and maybe some will describe it as a pivotal point in its development. And, like the rest of the business, it needs to adapt and change. But for now, it's really a time for HR. Lots of people are looking at HR to help, work through the changes. And for HR, we need to look, at ourselves and embrace the changes, in the way organizations and people function, in a digital world. So it's really important, I think, we take some time to really consider, HR itself. And, as I say, I think it's really exciting for HR with everybody looking for HR to map a way and a path through the so-called fourth industrial revolution. The question is, are we up for the challenge? And what should we be doing to help our HR teams be successful in that challenge? And for sure, I know it's challenging for HR, and it's been a really challenging time. It seems like everything we once held as true as being questioned, which is not a bad thing, and, gets us to think about things and be more critical about what we do, how we do it and why we're doing it, and we need to question ourselves. But the important thing is for us to hold on to the good things, and, look at the things that are really adding value. So during the next 20 minutes or so, we'll get some thoughts from HR leaders around technology adoption for HR. We'll take a look at, the wider landscape. I think it's important to kind of understand that, but we'll look at it fairly quickly and get a sense for, how things are changing, the future of work, organization, and society, and the influences there. We'll also look at how an organization's culture really brings value, and is that enabling, creating, impactful experiences and business success, and helping with transformation. Then I want us to take a moment to look at HR, and see if we can agree the opportunities for us. I'll share with you something I've called Digital HR 4.2, which is essentially just my thoughts around HR in that fourth industrial revolution. But more on that later. I think, for us to look at technology, we need to look at technology adoption, and I'll share with you some of my experiences from working in high tech and having completed dozens of technology implementations for the business as well as for HR. And then we'll finish with some of the main takeaways. And I'll put together some information from recent surveys and reports, and providing, certain data points to help us. Some of these reports are from KPMG, McKinsey, PwC, etc. So the good news is that the majority of HR leaders see that HR is undergoing digital transformation, but only a third are confident about their ability to transform, and less than a half have a digital plan, and even less than a quarter have people analytics as a priority in the next 2 years. But again, good piece of news is more than half have been investing in human capital management systems and cloud technologies. So it looks like the need for technology is strong, and there are some concerning signs that HR may not be lined up to deliver, or maybe it's just they're still in that storming phase, not quite sure what to focus on first, hence no plan probably. And don't forget, this is HR looking at HR. And again, maybe not surprisingly, HRC organization culture is a major barrier to successfully going digital, which to me supports that there's probably resistance to change in the organization and in the function. It could be, a lack of innovation coming through. Either way, it looks like culture needs to change and adapt for the new ways of working. For those who are investing, they're focusing on something called enhanced process automation. And where can we see that? I mean, particularly, I think this plays in, the HR admin services area or the shared services area. And some examples, include, auto-filling of forms, the use of chatbots that handle user queries, and even in, meeting scheduling tools. The next area where, people or HR leaders are investing are predictive analytics. This can work best where there's lots of data, and that data can be analyzed to find patterns and outliers. Examples include, identify employees who are, high risk of leaving, that flight risk. And I remember from 15 years ago when I was working in HR for SAS, the business intelligence software company, we first started to look at flight risk using predictive analytics. I mean, things have moved on considerably since then, but I think it's still very, very interesting to get into that area for organizations, particularly in terms of looking to retain top talent. And then finally, the investment in artificial intelligence and machine learning, which can be really applied in many, areas. An example that I like to use is, providing personalized skills and training recommendations, essentially by monitoring an individual on the job. So, it takes a look at how somebody's performing and then provides information relating to kind of feedback and does that in an automatic way, which then adds value to the employee as part of their development. It's exciting to see what organizations are actually using technology for. But I think it's also important, as I said at the beginning, we should consider, the wider external forces, if you like, the landscape. And the first area I want to kind of just cover quickly is, the lifespan. And the lifespan of organizations and skills are getting shorter and shorter. Some estimates are also suggesting, half of today's jobs will be lost or replaced by essentially, automation and the skills changes that are coming. And that could happen within the next 10 years. Clearly, people are living longer, and some are working beyond normal retirement age, and they're doing it in much more flexible ways as well. And technology, and technology adoption rates are becoming quicker, as technologies become much more affordable and reliable. With each wave of new technology, it kind of hits a tipping point and then becomes commercially viable. For example, 3D printing, when that first came out, you would have to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a 3D printer. Now you're into tens of thousands to get a really good one, commercially one. Or the Internet of Things, that's really hitting a tipping point in terms of connectivity and value. And, the huge volume of software apps that we can see. All adding value. The future of work continues to be a really hot topic, and a hot topic for HR. Automation and AI plays well, when there's high labor costs or there's, repetitive tasks, or even where there's a lack of skills, and it can come in and plug the gap there, depending on the situation and context. The concept of a job is being challenged, with the idea of unbundling work, breaking it down into tasks and capabilities and work packets. And then those work packets can then move around to where the talent is. And even we can get the talent to join network teams and get those work packets completed. And new skills quite clearly are going to be needed, and they're going to be in high demand, and they'll probably have a premium price tag. We're already seeing new ways to access talent through, contracting, freelancing, hackathons, crowdsourcing, bodies of expertise, knowledge, all providing greater flexibility for employees, workers, and employers. Organizations really are striving to become, more agile, and really so that they can respond quickly to changes and setbacks and seize market opportunity. And I see, people in customer-centric cultures, starting to converge, to drive more personalized customer and employee experiences. And all this is starting to reshape, the business models as we see it, and creating new mindsets. The way we do work, is really starting to change. Even to the point, where some organizations are looking at how they create, that positive impact in the world, by having much more of a socially and environmentally responsible approach, and the impact that they have in the wider society. And I think it's great to see more and more organizations, strengthen their purpose and their value proposition by looking at their social impact. Now, HR is playing an increasingly important role in that, in positioning the organization in society. And some economists and philosophers are predicting societal changes really are going to have profound effects on how we live and work. Even suggesting that capitalism needs reshaping and reforming. We'll no doubt see more regulation as governments catch up with technological changes and the disruption in the way in which we work. Time will tell whether we, see some of the things that are being discussed at the moment, like robot tax, or the introduction of universal income. But quite clearly in Europe, we've seen lots of regulatory changes coming in around Posted Workers Directive and data protection. And data protection has obviously been around for many, many years, but with the latest legislation. And I think, the best thing HR can do right now is focus on brand and creating a strong employee value proposition. Get it right, and it has a huge impact. It's a magnet to attract, engage, and retain top talent. And a tip from me would be, look at it from an employee or a candidate perspective. Think about, what's going to make them want to be with you. Which takes me, hopefully, nicely to talk about culture and values. And one of the biggest enablers to an organization and to HR is culture. And as I said before, get it wrong, and it's a real barrier to change. So I think it's important we take a moment to look at how HR can drive that agenda, and really drive it so it eases change and transformation. We saw, the view from HR leaders that, maybe change was one of the potential reasons why, things weren't moving forward. Now, all businesses, start with a purpose and a value proposition to take to the market. This then feeds into, how you do business and how you get things done. The things like your business and operating models, processes, infrastructure, the heart of an organization. This in turn, then impacts your employees and customers and leads to business success. And in the process, you build brand loyalty with customers and with employees. And I think we can all say we've seen examples of when there's a break in the chain, when culture gets disconnected. How many organizations have got empowerment as a value? But then they have, policies and procedures that need approval 3 or 4 levels up the organizations for relatively, small items, small things. Now, that's not good if you're a customer service rep handling, an important customer complaint. Yeah. Another example I think I see quite often is, a desire for innovation, and have that as a core value. But the prevailing leadership response to ideas coming through from employees is dismissive, and be dismissive of those new ideas in any number of ways and without any number of excuses. But the one I hated the most when I was in HR is, if it's not broken, it doesn't need fixing. Well, I think there's some salvation, at least for me, that by having predictive analytics, maybe I can win that argument if I had my time over. I strongly believe, that HR has a significant impact on culture and should use technology, as a leverage. In fact, I'll go one step further and say HR must drive the technology agenda. Why? Because it impacts on culture and values, on processes, on jobs and skills. And HR should do it, sure, in collaboration with the rest of the leadership team. Now, as you apply improvements within this model, in each of the areas, you'll have quicker and tighter alignment, and particularly when you're using technology, you can really start to see some momentum. Now, I think it's imperative for us to also discuss, the main challenges facing the HR profession, not just relating solely to culture, but some of the wider challenges. Now, the list of things for HR, is getting longer and longer. And for the past few years, HR has been criticised for not being a value-added partner and for remaining administrative. Yet all of these things on this slide and more, are areas where HR are making significant and positive progress. That to me says, I think we've got some work to do in terms of changing the perception and, really going and pushing back that criticism. Now, can you guess, which two areas I think HR should really push forward on in 2019? yeah, hopefully you can get it. Analytics and culture. Analytics to deliver predictive insights and getting the most out of technology. And culture, particularly, the people-centric culture and reconnecting with employees. And I think HR's kind of lost some of the connection with employees because it's had a organization lens rather than employee experience lens. So I think by having employee experience initiatives, we should start to reconnect back. And of course, you decide how many and in which areas, you're going to have as your priorities, to kind of move forward on. And I think finally, go talk to HR critics. If you've got HR critics in your organization, go talk to them and get them engaged in the HR journey and in its development. Now, most HR organizations that I've worked in and kind of work with now have followed or are following the three pillar model as far as organizing HR. That was introduced by Dave Ulrich. And, let's just remind ourselves what that model looks like. And it typically, it's this three pillar approach. And hopefully we're all familiar with this model, where HR services with lots of transactional activities, at the country, regional, global level, the centers of expertise, where policy and strategy initiatives are developed. And then, another major component, the HR business partner, operating at the regional or line of business level. But what's starting to really impact this model, and particularly today, is digitalization. The challenge then is, where does digitalization sit? As it touches every aspect of HR and every aspect of the organization. For sure, HR systems plays an important role in this, and that, we've seen, the development of people analytics emerge typically from, the HR systems area. And, it's been, very much on the back of, the human capital management systems and the investments we've made there. As I mentioned earlier, I think HR should really drive the technology agenda for the business and, in collaboration with the C-suite. The question is, does HR have the necessary capability right now to fulfill that? And what are some of the capabilities we're going to need, in the future to deliver on that? So let's start with a quick look at what two prominent experts think about HR capability. I quickly want to go through this, but if you've not seen these models before, again, I strongly recommend, take a further look at them, beyond this webinar. Dave Ulrich identified, the need for HR to have greater commercialization, or what he calls outside-in thinking. With the HR practitioner becoming that credible activist, whilst having 4 core responsibilities for the organization, including technology proponent, HR innovator and integrator, change champion, and capability builder. And then John Brodreau has laid out the development journey for HR, kind of over a 10-year time frame. And he's focused on the areas of a plan, attract, align, engage, and within the context of operational excellence. Now, for me, both models show HR, will add value by understanding new ways of working, have a deeper understanding of technology and what brings out the best in people, and all within a wider community social context. 2 of the prominent HR professional bodies, built their competency and capability models, that lay out critical elements needed for, a kind of or rather to be a successful HR practitioner. The Society for Human Resource Management, which, as Sean said, I'm a member of and a long-standing member of, and the CIPD, which I'm a chartered fellow of. Both models, form the basis for their professional accreditation and certification programs. They're really good places to map your own development journey. So if you've not done that already, I'd strongly recommend you take a look at both models and the one that's most relevant for you. And irrespective of whether you're starting out on your HR career or you're a seasoned practitioner, it's still useful, I think, to look at all of these frameworks and models and start to get some insights into where we can concentrate. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I wanted to share with you my thoughts on the HR organization and what I'm calling digital HR 4.2. And HR really in that 4th industrial revolution. So if we think about all the major influences, like the unbundling of HR jobs, network teams, new technology, employee experience, the extended workforce, et cetera, and then consider, having the right HR capabilities, then we have to, really start to ask ourselves, are we organized in the best way? How can we, align ourselves as a function going forward? Now, I think HR needs a much more fluid organization model where it has, key activities focused around teams which have the necessary capabilities to deliver. And then with this particular model, at the center of the model, is a group that looks at opportunities for HR, that innovation lab, and for the wider business. To test new ways of working and to look at rapid adoption of technology. The initial kind of priorities in this group, could well be, things like employee experience or people analytics or automation. The second group is, or the second area rather, is the business services group. And this is where all of the bulk of the people, processes, and services take place. And it'll be more than the transactional HR stuff, as they're providing end-to-end services that support the efficient functioning of the business. For example, talent management, and really supporting the business in what it's looking to do. Then the organization culture and performance teams are where we've got multifunctional capabilities, and they're focused around, those impactful interventions. What does that mean? Well, the micro silos, as I call them, of the centers of expertise, need to be broken down, and roles need to be unbundled, to then focus on, culture, performance, and social reputation. The fourth capability in this model is, the thing where we bring opportunity to life, and, in doing so, meeting client needs and expectations. I would also kind of anticipate with this model that resources are moving much more frequently within each of the areas, between each of the areas, as we see kind of the emergence of capability clusters. And, HR should also lead the way in unbundling its jobs and move into a new way of operating. And like the rest of the organization, HR will need to access external resources and capabilities. It could be that 50% of work in HR is done off payroll. These external resources can be deployed, across the whole of the model in all of the four areas. Another really important, area for HR on its digital journey is to collaborate with the best-in-class external partners and vendors. It could be outsourcing, it could be bringing in expertise and technology services. And if anyone's, interested in really finding out more about, the HR, Digital HR 4.2, then please just reach out to me and I'll be delighted. There's a lot more detail to this particular model, but we don't have time on the webinar to kind of go through that. So I think what is important for us to do is take a look at some of the technology considerations for HR. So during my HR career, I've experienced, some of the highs and lows of implementing technology in the business as well as in HR. Firstly, I know it sounds obvious, but have a clear strategy and plan. The number of times that we've fallen over because we didn't have that in place, and that we didn't lay out what our approach was going to be, and we didn't identify our key milestones. And sure, you need kind of hard and soft measures in all of this, and keep them front of mind when you're moving forward, and keep revisiting them. Build a business case, and have the ROI measures to really show the value, and make sure you're engaging with other parts of the business, your key stakeholders. I can't think of it's very rare these days, to find a technology solution that only involves one function in the business. So, connect and collaborate with the other groups. You should also, I think, have different approaches to technology. And my advice would be, try and find a new way before settling back to the other areas of re-engineering a process or digitizing, automating it. Look for much more transformational opportunity. And when you're buying external solutions, always look at how well it will integrate into your corporate technology landscape, and look for seamless data flows and single data entry. This is one of the biggest frustrations for HR teams I've worked with. Multiple points of data entry, different systems not talking to one another and sharing information. I think some of those things are now, well and truly dead and buried in the history of time. But make sure you've got that connectivity and that approach. And I think, keep asking yourself, why are we capturing this data? And how is it creating value? I mean, there's certain reasons now under data protection laws for doing that, but I think, also you've got to consider, scalability and particularly things around security and data protection. Whether it's a cyber attack or, you're looking at disaster recovery or data recovery. Make sure you're legally compliant. And then work with partners who are adaptable, who are experts in their space. They can really truly complement and add to your expertise, and they should also kind of complement your values and standards. And then, in terms of opportunity, why not use a combination of design thinking and technology to really take a look at reshaping your core activities? And start to innovate with the use of AI and analytics to drive better decision making. Find the places where you've got lots of data. In my experience, you have a kind of a discovery phase where you're learning as you go. And remember, if you have a task to do, then ask yourself the question: can I automate it? Can I use technology to get this done and get it done more effectively and more efficiently? And then I think finally use a blended decision making. This is about using data and the data insights, but also just remembering ultimately the decision sits with you. I use a very simplistic example. Your car or your auto navigation system, tells you to go straight on, but the bridge is out. Oh, okay, so a simplistic example, but I think you've also just probably spotted I've got an old version of the software because it didn't tell me to take a different direction, knowing that the bridge was out. So I think, in conclusion, I would say, the biggest takeaways are: have a digital mindset. Look at everything you do with a view of using technology. Build and develop your HR capabilities and grow in confidence. I advise, organizations and HR teams, use coaches and mentors to help you support, your journey and your ability to deliver, and also building that capability and confidence. And those coaches and mentors can be internal or external, or both. And look at where you can unbundle HR jobs. Maybe test this out with your own job description. That's if you have one. But break it down into what some people are calling kind of meaningful moments. But keep drilling down until you get to the must-keep tasks. And consider how you need to be organized, and how you can deliver and start to prepare your HR teams for the future. For sure, get the foundations in place, so that you've got a way of capturing data and information, and then start to identify best-in-class add-ins. And look for mobile and cloud-based solutions if you can do that. And I know some regulations kind of prevent you from doing it, but I think if you can find that, it will make your life so much easier if you're mobile and you're using cloud-based solutions, and keeping up to date with the best-in-class developments. And technology changes so often. And it's so important to find new ways of kind of keep connected with knowing what's working well out in the market. So try and find pathways to find the latest insights. And I think HR, and maybe this is a little bit provocative, but I think HR should mirror the organization's market approach, how it approaches the market. Is it a trailblazer or a fast follower or a laggard? Right? hopefully you're not in the laggard kind of group. But I think it should mirror that. And if that doesn't work for you, then challenge it. Offer up HR as the place to start any new transformation project. And we all need to kind of think differently, be open-minded, be bold, and, use data to help you challenge things and to give you clarity on what's working well. I think sometimes it's so easy to go the shortest route, where some of the best and most meaningful impacts to the business are actually the longer term projects that require much more determination. And there's lots of opportunity for HR to use technology. And, and the best place, as I say, is where there's the biggest business impact. And keep learning and growing. Remember, even failures are learning opportunities. And, and always apply what I call the sensibility test. Sometimes what the data is telling you isn't always the right choice or the best choice for you. So we've covered quite a lot of information there. And I'd like to say, thank you to everyone for your patience and listening. And back to you, Sean.
Great. Thanks, Chris, for taking us through that. Definitely a lot there to digest. So if you do have any questions, now's the time to pick Chris's brain here. We have had a couple of questions that have come through, so we'll go ahead and get started with those. But if you think of anything you'd like to ask, just drop it in using that questions section on the GoToWebinar control panel. So, Chris, the first question that came in is, what's the best way to unbundle jobs in HR, and can you give us an example?
Yeah, sure. I mentioned about taking a look at your own job description, but I think the first thing to do is take a look at that job description and check to see if it's actually the reality of what's being done, because there can be some interesting discussion points around what you've got listed on a job description versus the reality of what's actually getting done, and that can give you some insight by doing that. And I think the other thing to do is keep drilling down and identifying what I call that kind of scope creep, and find the true purpose. And I think I've done that with roles that I've had, not necessarily to look at fully unbundling the job, but roles that we required a different level of expertise, which you can then bring into the organization. So that's kind of an example of needing something in terms of a task and a capability. And then also with individuals who are looking for more flexibility, taking tasks out. Some people are very highly paid professionals, and they're doing lots of administrative tasks as part of their overall job description. So you can start to filter some of those things out and pass them out, either through the use of technology and automate them, making life easier. That example of multiple systems, multiple data entry, multiple passwords. All of this stuff can help free up time for individuals to focus on the more meaningful parts of their job, and the tasks that are really going to add value.
Great, thanks for that, Chris. Another question that's come in is, what suggestions do you have to help me convince my leadership team to invest in an HR technology?
Yeah, this is a question I get quite often. I think the first thing is, and it's not a flippant kind of response, is don't call it HR technology. Think broader in terms of the business impact. Because I think then you're starting to identify, a bigger audience, and reach out to the other functions, like like finance, like IT and development and services, and whatever functions you've got in the organization, and start to get them to be part of building that business case. Where there's people, there's that opportunity to do it, and then show how it impacts on the value chain, and agree the measures that you're going to have, and kind of work through with the best-in-class vendors. I think there's a wealth of knowledge and expertise with best-in-class vendors. They're working with multiple clients. They're helping those clients with developing their business case, and doing the things around adding value to the business. But also, they're able to show the value and show the proof of concept. And the two things I found in my experience that senior leaders are looking for, return on investment, business value, and proof of concept.
Great. Yeah, Chris, I would definitely agree. Proof of concept and value, it has to be the big driver in a lot of those things when you're trying to invest in technology.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. So I think we have time here for one final question. This one is, are you suggesting that the Ulrich model for structuring HR doesn't work?
Absolutely not. Yeah. I've implemented the Dave Ulrich model, in two of my previous organizations, and it's proved to be very successful. I'm even working with some clients now who are looking to refresh it, or even go into implementing it. They're part of that group who are still looking at implementing the Ulrich model. What I'm saying, though, is that I think it's important to look at, do you have the right approach and capability? And for some organizations, I feel like those trailblazers, they'll be looking at this and kind of going, yeah, we need that HR innovation lab. We need to be able to, adapt and get technology adoption rates increase. So we need a group focus on that. We need more fluidity, as we unbundle jobs within the HR community. And I think, the thing that is so important with the Ulrich model is making sure you've got the right mindsets within the HR team. Dave Ulrich has, I think, recognized that by talking about this outside in thinking, and really having the right kind of mindset. So I think I'm definitely not poo-pooing the Dave Ulrich model. I think it needs to kind of reform and reshape, and particularly in our digital world.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that, Chris. At this point, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our webinar. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to present and obviously putting together the information. And to our attendees, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any feedback, you can send that to info@topia.com. We'd love to hear it. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar and other future events, which can be found at topia.com/events. Thanks everyone again, and we will see you soon.